Good Saturday morning, everyone. This is Mitch. Hope you guys are having a great start to your day, a great start to your weekend. Got you an update on what is going on in the weather world. We're going to talk briefly about what's going to happen today, very briefly, but then we're going to go ahead and dive into what's going to happen next week, as chances are just as high at this point that they were last weekend that we're going to have severe weather for the incoming week, if that makes any sense. So this coming week, we're going to have more severe weather. They've already dropped basically an enhanced risk at day 5, which is this coming Wednesday, and a slight risk for your day 4, which is this coming Tuesday, and a slight risk for day 6, which is this coming Thursday. So severe weather is likely to happen at this point next week, and it could be another outbreak of a severe storm. So that's what we're going to talk about mostly in this video. I feel like we need to get people more alert even at this range as much as possible. So if you guys have not subscribed, definitely consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. Appreciate the amazing support as always. If you guys got anything I can pray about, please put it in the comments below. If it's unspoken, put that. It gives me an opportunity to pray over it, and it gives others an opportunity to do so too. So let's get going. Let's talk briefly about what's going to happen today, because today is going to be kind of eventful. We had some snow squalls yesterday evening for portions of the Ohio Valley. Some thunder snow, and we're having convective in nature snow squalls flying around portions of the Ohio Valley this morning, and it's going to continue to do so. And in fact, it's probably going to get even more amplified. Honestly, I think there's going to be a more robust area of moisture that really pops off Lake Erie, places like that, and gets into Ohio, western areas of PA. Pittsburgh, for example, could see some snow flying around later this afternoon. Well, this morning, really, if you're not already seeing any right now. West Virginia, definitely some snow flying around. Then some more snow will probably develop here in Indiana, maybe even portions of far eastern Illinois. Some snowy, squally kind of weather. And guys, these could be brief whiteout conditions, really convective in nature snow squalls. So, and I'm talking about Indiana, Ohio, areas of PA, even areas of New York, and obviously even areas of the interior areas of the Northeast up here could see some rain showers and mainly snow at higher elevations up there. But then West Virginia, and then portions later on this evening as we're getting into 5-6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, some snow squalls can make it all the way into the higher elevations of Virginia, even northern Kentucky. So very interesting to see this, but it's not super uncommon. We're still technically in March, so we can get some crazy weather, but we're already getting, lake effect snow popping off the eastern side of Lake Michigan as you get a flow out the northwest, and you got snow popping off the lakes off the southeast. So it happens. Chilly day expected, but there's going to be a big time temperature gradient. It's going to feel like winter up here in the Ohio Valley, even portions of the mid-Atlantic, and be pretty chilly up here in the northeast. But then you see how it's this crazy northwest to southeast kind of oriented boundary. Well, the cold front is only hitting this area right up here. So you're able to get some warm air that's building in Texas. So it's going to be one of your warmest days of the year in Texas, for example. 80s, pushing close to 90 in a lot of areas. In fact, a lot of areas will see 90 degrees in Texas. Very dry, though. There's a lot of red flag warnings across the country, which means you basically don't need to burn anything. It's going to be windy. It's very dry. A lot of areas out here have not seen rain in a long time. So do not burn anything. And even, you obviously can't control anybody else's action, but definitely just be careful what you do with anything that is fire. So, across the southeast is a weird day. It's going to be very windy, very, very windy. I know I got a lot of yard work to do myself today, a lot of yard work to do, and it's just going to be very breezy. The winds are not going to cooperate, and it's not going to be super warm either, as you're still influenced a little bit by this cold front. So let's go on and talk about the severe weather here. At day 4, nothing at between days 1 and 3, but at day 4, which is your Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, March 29th through Wednesday morning, 15% risk of severe weather occurring in 25 miles in any given location in this yellow area. This is basically a slight risk, and this is including areas of Kansas, through a large chunk of Oklahoma, through a large area of northern Texas. So you got this, and then you go to day 5. And you same region, but you have a 30% risk now opened up. So that's basically a level 3 out of 5 risk at day 5. We had the same thing last week. So they're very confident that severe weather is going to happen. Now, they're not confident on day 5 as far as the storm mode. And, we weren't very confident at day 5 last week around this time as far as the storm mode for this setup either. But we're going to know a lot more here in the coming probably 24 to 48 hours. So I'll talk about what I mean there. There's also a day 6, and it's a very small region in areas of North Carolina and Virginia mostly. We'll have to watch this as forcing, we will lose this forcing, and it just loses kind of the overall dynamics to create severe weather by the time you get to day 6. It's going to be kind of like almost, you can't say it's identical, but it's going to be very similar to what happened last week across portions of the South. So let's talk about what's going on. So we're getting into, well, we'll go on and stop it right here. We're getting into, this is Monday evening. You got a disturbance moving onto the coast of the West Coast here. This will continue to move through the southern Rockies and probably promote a little bit of snow for the Rockies, maybe a lot. But it'll be a little bit warmer in nature. I don't think you're going to see as much snow breaking out across portions outside the Rockies. But we'll stop it here. This is for Tuesday evening, afternoon. You're not seeing it, but you're probably getting some dry line thunderstorms developing in this region. We'll keep this going and it really pops up. It might turn into an overnight threat. I really think, in fact, that Tuesday's threat will be more after the sun goes down. But we'll have to see how that develops here. But we're getting into later Wednesday, getting into Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening. And here's the big severe weather threat right here in this region. Now, there's still a lot of question marks whether this is going to be more linear. When we're talking storm mode, you got a discrete storm mode and you have a more linear mode. And I would say you have a third mode also, which is basically a combination between both, when you basically have a lack of dry air aloft, and basically you have no good steep lapse rates, so basically just have a lot of convection, but inside all this messy convection, which is basically a lot of individual storms are all kind of mashed together, you have conditions that are favorable due to favorable kinematics to still create tornadoes. So this is for your Wednesday. This is, obviously the GFS, it's not a cam, it's not a short-term convective model. But moving forward here, we're really look into basically what is going on as far as, but basically what is going on here is you got this large shortwave trough that's starting to dig down here like it did last week. It's a little bit different as far as the placement and location, but this is digging down here. What happens is you have moist advection that shoots out ahead of it, which is those dew points, those higher dew points into the 60s, that moist environment at the surface that you need for severe weather. We talk about this a lot when it comes to severe weather. You need those high-end dew points reaching the 60s, low 70s especially. When you start to get into the 70s, you start to get into the danger zone as far as tornadic development. And of course, you need a lot of other dynamics also to come together. But still, once you get into the 70s, it doesn't take much. Normally, when you have dew points in the 70s, you have some high-end convective levels, CAPE. So going forward here, this kind of digs down here, a shortwave trough. This pumps out this moisture out ahead of it, promotes a more moist sector. And this continues, same situation. You're getting into Wednesday midday. A lot of moist air shoots out ahead of this trough. And you have an environment as far as the moist levels that's supportive for severe weather. This continues, it definitely looks different. It's not like a cutoff trough. It's mainly just a shortwave, huge trough. It's a little bit different. It looks a lot different than basically what happened last week. I know it's a little bit different and a lot different, kind of contradict itself, but in the grand scheme of things, as far as severe weather, you still have the same ingredients for severe weather. So we'll look at what's going on as far as dew points for pivotal weather. Going forward here, we're getting into your Monday. Moisture is already starting to build ahead of this shortwave trough. Now, one difference between Tuesday and Wednesday I'll talk about is either way you have moisture that advects into this region. But one thing you do have is what you have a EML, or elevated mixed layer. So think of that as kind of a punch of dry air aloft. It helps mid-level lapse rates, or just lapse rates in general. So cooling aloft happens much quicker the more you rise in temperatures in the upper levels of the atmosphere. Therefore, you can have more of a discrete storm mode. When you don't have a lot of dry air aloft, like I really think will be more of the case when you get into Wednesday, it causes for basically a lack of a cap, which means convection kind of pops up at will, if you will. So convection is easier to kind of fire up. Therefore, you can't get storms to get discrete. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have a tornado threat, but that means that you're probably going to have more of a tornado threat. And I'm not saying this is going to happen, but you'll probably have more of a tornado threat with a squall line of storms for Wednesday. Some of those tornadoes that are embedded into the squall line. We had that actually happen last Tuesday. It happened a lot, actually, Monday into Tuesday, as tornadoes were embedded into that line, which can be even more dangerous when you have that discrete mode, because the discrete, those kind of isolated supercells, you can see those tornadoes coming a lot better. But anyways, don't want to get off the track, but that is important to mention. I think the main differences between Tuesday and Wednesday as far as severe weather, and even mentions that in the storm prediction discussion. But going forward here, moisture really starts to build, and this is where the severe weather threat really comes into play right in here. There's a dry line that sets up here, and then I really think that's where storms big time supercells could potentially develop, especially when we get to the overnight hours. Now we get into your Wednesday, moisture builds ahead of a line that develops. How discrete will the storm mode get? Like I mentioned, we're just not sure, but I do think the atmosphere will be supportive for severe weather. In fact, more supportive, especially with the kinematics, and I'll mention that in a second. So stick with me. We're going to talk about the mid-level jet and the low-level jet, because those will help to aid in an atmosphere that's really, really supportive for tornadoes. So going forward here, moist sector builds. It's a sloppy-looking moist sector, almost a dual one right here, but that this is when the atmosphere gets primed for severe weather for areas in the mid-Atlantic and southeast. So we'll have to watch how that develops here. But going forward, what does the convective levels look like? Well, normally in global models, they tend to underdo the convective levels, the CAPE levels. So we're getting into Tuesday. How does those CAPE levels look? Where you can see it firing off along that dry line, but you don't have a lot of CAPE, right? It's not a lot. You have values maybe reaching anywhere from 500 or 1,000 joules per kilogram going forward, but you can really see it fire off along this dry line really briefly, reaching well over 1,000 in this area. But we'll have to look at the short range models. But we'll go forward. We're getting into Wednesday, and a little bit of CAPE that develops ahead of this line. But how discrete does this storm mode get? The GFS, for example, doesn't show really high end CAPE levels right now. But then again, it's really hard to even look at that this far out, because you really need to get into short range models before you really figure out what's going to happen. This is what you call the mid-level jet. So this is basically winds in the mid-levels, several thousand feet up in the air. Winds are screaming out the southwest. So you got winds coming out the southwest in one level of the atmosphere, right? And you got a 70, 80, almost 90 knot jet flying around here. So winds are screaming well aloft, and this is moving through overnight. At the same time, with this mid-level jet coming across right when these storms are firing up, you have a low-level jet that you watch out for. And as we're going forward here, this low-level jet will be pumping out, it's definitely not too crazy, but right where the storms are going to develop, a low-level jet, maybe 30, 40, maybe 50 knots, right where these storms really get going here. But the low-level jet really pumps out as you get a little bit further east. And we'll talk about the Wednesday threat. And let's go on and pump it out. I did not mean to do that. So, yes, a little bit of confusion here. I thought I had the dynamics pulled up here. But anyways, let's keep it going here. Okay, yeah, let's move it a little bit forward. I know what happened here. I know what I have. Sometimes I'll pull all these panels and I have a plan in my head, and then I forget that I didn't pull up enough tabs. But there's a reason I didn't pull up enough tabs. So let's keep this going into your Wednesday threat. So we're getting into Wednesday afternoon. Look at this mid-level jet shooting across areas of Louisiana, Arkansas, and Mississippi, and western areas of Tennessee. And we're getting into more Thursday late afternoon. So you have a mid-level jet pumping out the southwest at about 90 to 100 knots. That is big time shear. So you look at the low-level jet for that same time frame. Let's go on and get ahead. And you got a low-level jet pumping out, 60 to 70 knots, coming out more of the south. So you have winds coming out of this direction, and it might be a directionally different. We're looking at the screen. Winds coming out of this direction in the low levels, winds coming out of this direction out the mid-levels. So it causes these really long hodographs, and let's see if I got a good sounding out of this area. So these elongated hodographs, so these stretched out. So you have basically a tornado parameter here with this veering in these low levels that really create that low level shear you need for tornadoes. And those moist levels reaching the mid 60s, those dew points. So definitely an environment supported for tornadoes. We're not going to really get to see how this develops as far as the storm mode until we get into the convective models. But basically, here's the threat for your Tuesday. Storms fire up late evening into the overnight hours. These can be in the form of more supercells. But as it gets into the overnight hours, you're getting into Wednesday afternoon, next Wednesday afternoon. It looks like it turns more into a more linear mode, a line of storms that could produce tornadoes. And we'll switch it over here. Well, we just have to see what the storm mode is going to do. But this could be a dangerous line of storms in Mississippi and Alabama, even up into Tennessee. So that's all I got, guys. Thank you all for tuning in. I'll probably have another update on this tonight and see what's going on and what they're talking about, what the Storm Prediction Center is really talking about here. But God bless everybody. Y'all have a great day, and talk to y'all soon.